10-time outlaw champion from Fargo, North Dakota, Kart Westport Performance SafeCurve.com digital outline number 15, Donny Schatz. Donny Schatz in the 15.
He's 16 years young. Disgusting. Youth wasted on the young. The follow the checkered flag. And the Hardy's jet that goes with it. A big hand for young and very talented Donny Schatz, a Minot driver of car number 15.
You know, I think the very first time that I started to worry a little bit was when he was about, maybe 5 years old. We had a three-wheeler. He could race around our horse barn at that time. And he just had a track built up, and he'd get his sisters to throw mud at him so he could take the tear-offs.
I used to just be kind of floored with the whole tear-off thing, you know, so wanted to have a helmet with tear-off, so I'd actually have my sisters go get a bucket with water and some mud, and we'd make mud. When I come by, I'd make them throw it at me. But you know, we used my dad's old helmet, and he just had regular bolts for tear-off posts.
So he'd come around and go, whack, 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 and throw mud, and I'm not sure that the actual mud ball ever hit the tear-off at the right time.
One day they were out there practicing, and he came out to, I was working out in the yard, and he drives up with the three-wheeler and flips up his visor, and he said, "Want to see me do a wheelie, Mom?" And I thought, oh boy.
But I used to get in a lot of trouble. Just made so many laps, I just kept digging the trench out, and he'd get mad because he'd hook his horses and drive around there, and it was so, I'd make my own bank just from starting in one spot and blowing the gravel up. And
Donny only wore racing t-shirts, and so when we were kids, Deanne and I would get after him and kind of make fun of him because it was like, you need to take that Doug Wolfgang shirt off, you know, and he wouldn't. I mean, it was all he wore.
He was always the one to want to go to the races in Grand Forks, Fargo, even Knoxville. And the ironic part of the whole thing was he had his heroes. He had Doug Wolfgang was probably his #1 hero. Don could remember all different things about each race, and he was talking about it, how Doug would pass this car in this race, this car in that race, and this move that he made. I thought, wow.
That's all he wore to school was racing t-shirts for about, I don't know, from about the time he was about 8 or 9 years old till he got to be about 10, I think we put him in a go-kart, and at about 14 we put him in a sprint car. So that's how we kind of got started. My dad came home with this racing go-kart, and just kind of started from there. You know, we obviously used to go watch the sprint car races, but that's kind of where my racing really started, was go-karts. And it was a little bit different type of racing than what maybe you see now. We didn't have dirt there. It was like a road course on pavement. So that's kind of where I got my start with being able to go-kart anything. We did some fun things back then. We had a tire store, and we did you know, retreading of tires, and it was one of my younger jobs, was working in the retread plant, doing different jobs. And they had this drag truck superhero, Tyrone Malone was his name, and he had all these trucks, and it was like Smokey and the Bandit coming to town and do burnouts and do crazy things with these diesel trucks. So I got to do an exhibition with him burning the go-kart tires out one time, and so it kind of just got my need for speed going, and kind of brought me to having an opportunity when I was 14 years old to drive a sprint car. I made some laps at Grand Forks at River City Speedway. A guy named Doug Slocum, who my dad knew from racing back there. He owned a car, he crew chiefed the car, and his driver was Todd Mack, and the Mack family was great family friends of our family. So they let me hot lap it one night, and
we were pretty well hooked from there, and that's kind of what led us down the path of the sprint car career.
You want to go for oh.
Tip through right there. Hey Don, is that you in there? Oh, there goes number 15. Even when he started in '93, you know, he got into Don Mack let him get into the car, I believe, at Grand Forks Speedway, and he got in there. And I just kind of felt like once he got in and had the test drive out of the way, and we bought the first car, it was going to be serious. He was going to take it seriously, and we would try to provide him with the best safe equipment that we could without going overboard, and it didn't take him long to prove that he had the ability to think and drive at the same time.
He was a kid that knew exactly what he wanted, and that was racing. And he's never stopped. And I always thought that was cool. Just to know somebody who's like born a race car driver, a kid that loved it, you know, and now he's, you know, in his 40s and extremely successful, and he's still that same person.
You know, Donnie's focus has always been the same. And it angers me when I hear people say that, you know, he got opportunities because his parents had money. It's not like we're at the level of Tony Stewart or Chip Ganassi, or, you know, we're not there. It's a perception of they did whatever they had to do to get him there. We always had nice stuff, but we took care of our stuff. We took care of it. We worked on it, you know, not so much me, but, you know, everybody has a passion and the same drive to succeed, whether it's in business or racing or whatever it is in our family. That's how we are.
You know, one of the things that we had him do even when he was racing go-karts is we told him that he wasn't going to learn anything starting in the front, so we always made him start in the back in the go-kart. And at the time he started, well, he was racing against adults and quite a little lighter than they were, so when we started them in the back, we didn't have any complaining and whining. When we started in the sprint car, I told him the same thing. And I guess if you can't pass the guys that are running in the back, I don't know why you want to hurt the guys that are running in the front. So that's probably the only basic thing. I think I've never told him what or how. A lot of times I tell him what I thought I saw. Not that he always agreed with that, but our discussions, whether we were in the airplane flying back and forth across the country or just visiting, he had to use his own mind to decide where he had to go and what he had to do. So when it come to me telling him to do something stupid or fancy, that never happened.
When they started the go-karts, then my dad had a blacksmithing kind of shop. He used to make horseshoes, and half the shop, it got divided, and one half was Donnie's go-kart / race shop, and the other half was used for, you know, various things. And when my dad put that up, my brother, he was there all the time. Like, it was just like, where's Donnie? He's in the shop. You know, he parked his car in front of it, which was a ways away from our house. And he'd walk back and forth to the house, whether it was the middle of winter in Minot or not, but he loved having his space. And I remember the first racing trailer they brought home, this black, enclosed racing trailer. And I mean, he was like he was like a kid with his first vehicle. Like he spent so much time in this trailer, in the driveway, or in the yard, where he just wanted to be inside the race trailer. He had a race trailer, and it was like that with the first of everything that he did. You know, he really put his life into it.
Be a good finish for Donny tonight, you think?
First, it's the 15th. He's car 15, turned 16 Tuesday. So we're ready for a win. It's gonna be dry and slick tonight. That's the way we like them. So hopefully we can do good.
What's going through your mind being here tonight? I would think you'd like to do well tonight.
Yeah, to start out with, you know, we did really good Friday night, and we did really good last night. We led the feature both nights this weekend, so we'd like to come out here and win tonight. Who can hit the right setup and who can drive it the best, so we'll see what happens.
I knew who Danny and his wife were from driving for Doug House, because they used to have Schatz Crossroads on that car. And as far as racing goes, I didn't really hear of him until I got burned in the spring of 1992, and I didn't really hear of him racing yet, although I still heard the name around, you know, because I'm from back here, and you know the people around here and somewhat, and the ones up in North Dakota, and his name was always on a car or two, you know, the Schatz names. And they started coming to Houston, and my brother-in-law built cars here in town, Brian Cheney, and I don't know if they ever really had a Brian car, but he used to fix them for him, and he fixed a lot of cars for him in 1993 and 4 about.
I just remember this black car, number 15, and some kid from North Dakota named Donny Schatz. And I go, okay, it wasn't really, that's the thing about Donny. His debut, the first time I saw him, didn't really make anything special happen in my mind. It wasn't like, okay, this kid is going to be amazing. Like the first time you saw him, he was just like, okay, here's another sprint car driver. It's a testament to how much he's worked to improve his craft. He wasn't one of those kids that came out and right off the bat said, oh, this kid's got so much natural talent. It's so apparent right off the bat. It's just he has worked his way into becoming one of the greatest to ever sit behind the wheel of a sprint car.
I went to the races in Grand Forks, and I'd heard that this young kid, Donny Schatz, was going to be racing for the first time. And following his dad, Danny, and, you know, as a young kid and actually living close to him in Minot, thought, God, I got to go watch, you know, and see how he's doing and so forth. And
Donny started racing at a pretty young age, just running a family car out of well, it had been Fargo, and not wasn't Fargo then, it had been Minot, out of Minot and stuff with his dad, and so you know, watched him come out and start back. I mean, he'd ran his career, but he started running with the World of Outlaws at a pretty early stage, and you know, you could see he had a lot of talent all the way, and the car, you know, ran good, and then you know, he sort of got hooked up with Kenny Woodruff. They hired Kenny Woodruff to take care of the car, and then he started winning a few races. Not that he was running really well, anyways, to start with. So just continued getting better and better and better as the years went on.
You know, I interviewed him when he was a rookie with the World of Outlaws, which shows how old I am. And, you know, I sat in a little camper with him, and you could just tell that he was going to be one of those guys. Maybe not a Mount Rushmore guy like he is, but you knew he was going to win a lot of races. You knew he had what it took. And I'm not surprised at all with how far he's come. When I first interviewed him, I thought the sky was the limit. And he's definitely lived up to that. And I don't think he's done yet.
Before I knew him, I thought he was a prick. But that was just a preconceived notion that most people have, have those with certain people. And I wasn't really a fan. I knew that he was probably going to be pretty good. Was he going to be the GOAT? Didn't know that at the time, but I always kind of thought he was a bit of a prick, but I didn't really know him. And then once I got to know him and we kind of started off with a relationship or a friendship and all that, it's like, this guy's actually pretty cool. He's got probably one of the biggest hearts of anybody I've ever met. He tries to act like some tough guy and hard ass and all that, but he's really, I mean, he is, but he's deep down, he's very loyal, and he always has your back. That's one thing that I do remember him. You could be, struggling and, and there should be changes made and all that, but he is loyal. Loyal.
Well, like I say, everybody knows him as a racer, but for those that know behind the scenes, I mean, he's a caring, giving kind of person. I mean, he's really thoughtful and goes out of his way to do things for you. It's just one of those things where, you kind of wish more people could see that for him, about him.
If you're a part with Don, you're a part of the whole family with them. I've never seen a family that just takes you in and treats you like one of them. And it is an incredible family. Everybody in that family gets up every morning with goals to accomplish, and they get things done, and every one of them are professionals in their own right of what they do each and individual day. So yeah, it's a great family. I've come to admire every one of them, and it is neat to see how the operation, because it's so vast, how it works every day with those folks.
Donnie's family is everything to him. I mean, his parents go to the races. You'll see his sisters occasionally show up at the races. Obviously, he loves those two nieces of his, and he's got them going in full-size race cars now. His family means everything to him, but his family has instilled the work ethic and the values that it takes to be successful in life, and not just in life, but that's also what's helped him be successful behind the wheel of a race car too. But it starts with that foundation that Danny and Diane taught Donnie, and that carries through with everything he does. I mean, as a pilot, I mean, it takes a lot of time, and you have to dedicate a lot of time to be diligent, to stay up on your qualifications and certifications. And Donnie's one of those guys that, there's a lot of pilots I know that are not real crazy about getting in a plane when they're flying. Donnie's not one of those guys. You know that when Donnie's flying, he takes it as serious as he does driving a race car or running the business. So that's just the kind of person he is that whatever he focuses on, he's going to give it 100%.
I don't think fans, understand that he's a lot of fun, especially away from the track or when you're not eyeball deep in the middle of an event, because, again, when he's at the racetrack, he's at work. But he's also exceptionally smart, and I think fans don't always understand that either. They know that he's a pilot, they know that the family owns businesses, they know all these things, but I don't think they really stop to think about it. He's extremely intelligent, he's extremely personable, and once you kind of get through that outer wall and you get closer to him, he's a lot of fun, and he can be absolutely just a ball of fun. You never know what you're going to get into, like off the wall sayings. He and Tony, actually, I call them pot and kettle because they're a lot alike. They are very, hardcore when it comes to their racing, but that's because it's serious. But yet you've got this personality that's bigger than life, and a lot of people don't have the privilege to see that. And then you throw in the fact that either one of them would give you the shirt off their back if they thought you really needed help. That's what makes them very unique individuals. And I think, especially in Donnie's case, because he tries so hard and works so hard at keeping that posterior, that I'm very serious, I'm very focused look. But once you crack through that and get through that, there's a very unique individual within his personality that people don't really get to see.
The unfortunate thing about Donny Schatz is that people aren't going to know him outside of that 5 to race time and directly after. I think he's engaging. I think he's humorous. I think you've seen that. I've seen that. I think he's great for the sport. I think he understands there's got to be a villain sometimes, and he can be that guy. I think he's a character. People won't know that because of the 5 o'clock thing you talked about. And that's unfortunate. But when 5 o'clock does come, and when he does put on that helmet, there's nobody better in this business. There's nobody who's more focused. I don't know if there's anybody who thinks their way through a race like he does. He knows everybody he's racing with, their tendencies, what they're going to do. It's why he doesn't get in a lot of wrecks, doesn't flip much, usually is very rarely is he out of position where he gets in trouble. And yeah, this is his office. This is his place of work. And I think, and again, I just go back to, it's a shame people don't know Donny outside of that, but you know, he's the most successful sprint car driver of our era. So that's pretty good.
Why do you think? I think the fact that Donny has maybe a bit of a public perception of gruffness or being a bit aloof because people see him at work and he is just that focused on the task at hand. Again, I go back to the work ethic that his family instilled in him from an early age. He didn't have anything handed to him. He has worked the race team that he had with his parents up into being able to have a position at Tony Stewart Racing. He has worked for everything he has gotten, and he puts that same level of concentration into his performance in the race car. For Donny, he is focused on winning a race at the racetrack. And again, if you come up to him after the races, I think he's a lot more approachable if you see him away from the racetrack. But when it comes time to put the helmet on and put the game face on, there is nobody more focused than Donny Schatz.
Younger, but I couldn't just ultimately walk away from something or change my direction because I wasn't good at it. I wanted to prove it to myself and the people that supported us. We had great people that always, Dick Bellerud, he's been gone for years, and you know, he was an intricate part of our racing career. He would go with us all the time racing, and there was a lot of nights when he was the referee between me and my father, and he loved racing too. So you know, there's just a lot of people, and I was always surrounded by great people, and there was always someone that was there to help or to be a part of it and kind of push us along the way, whether it be the people in Minot that from having a fundraising event to a party to coming to there to race the first time with the World of Outlaws. So just so many different people along the way that were a part of it that it's hard to even put into words how each one impacted what happened to get to this point.
This isn't new for Donny because he was raised around business atmosphere. You know, his parents were business people. They owned multiple businesses as he was growing up. So he was always exposed to that and always aware of how. And I think that's actually part of their family as well. You know, the Schatzes treat people well. They make an effort to go that extra mile to make people feel welcome. And that ties into their business experience. You know, it's a business world. So how you function and move in that world, I think that helps. But Donny really was already there because he had already been exposed to that. You know, he was an active part of their family businesses. This wasn't a new world to him because he had already been part of that for many years at that point.
I'd already started Parker Store Racing. We had Jimmy Mars running late models, and we were looking to go with something a little more, you know, across the country, a little more solid. So a few of us guys, a couple of my friends and my younger brother, decided one night, during the middle of a week race, we were going to run out to a place called Arlington. It's kind of the southwest of the Minneapolis area. And I talked on the way out, like the following week, I wanted to get a hold of Donny or the Schatz family and see about sponsoring him or start the talks with them. And we got there. We no more than opened the door in the parking lot, and the announcer was announcing a big surprise that Donny Schatz was in the house tonight. So I kind of looked at it like, wow, this is the ideal time. This was put there for a reason, that I'm there and he's there, and that's kind of where we started with it.
as a team to run a family?
Well, at that point, I didn't know a ton about Donnie. I knew he was a hot shoe, I guess you'd call it, in the Midwest. He was just starting to break out, just starting to win races in the Wissota series. My brother was always telling me about him and pushing that we should, take a look at doing something with him. And that's kind of where I got in, starting to look at it. And then that hookup at Arlington originally was the big kickoff.
Sure.
Once he'd won a Wissota championship and wanted to go to the 410s, I thought, ooh, this is a big step. But, it was a step in the right direction. The hard part back then was, because we didn't go to a lot of big races, was finding the right crew chief, that wanted to travel at that level. And that took a little time to sort all that out. And then living in North Dakota, you're 500 miles from anything. So it wasn't just the 500 or just finding the crew chief. It was finding somebody that would move here, and then the traveling to the races, and you didn't get home very often. It made it kind of difficult.
I don't know if it's any more difficult as far as actually getting, being on the track and showing what you're made of. But trust me, when you got to drive, it's easy in central Pennsylvania, because the longest drive you're going to have is an hour and 15 minutes, and you can race 3 or 4 times a week. Around here, and even more so in North Dakota, and worse than that at the time, they lived in Minot. My God, it was 8 or 9 hours to the nearest track, and that's the nearest one. So you have to have a lot of desire to do it beyond the regular person, even from the beginning.
They ran it truly like their full intention was to make money. And I think between their sponsorships they had, and I'm sure apparel sales, that, I'm sure they weren't losing money. I don't know, I haven't seen their books, but just the way they ran it, that was the first real dose of, hey, this is how you're supposed to run things. And at the time, I remember when I left there in 2004, I was going to get married, so I just up and left. But, or I didn't up and leave. I finished the year out, but I wasn't going to come back. I despised them. I thought, man, how in the hell do you work for these people? Because they had high expectations. They were never mean, but they had high expectations. If you're kind of sloughing off a little bit, they didn't like that. The whole goal was to build a race team, or to have a race team and do your best to win races. So, they didn't like a bunch of monkey business or anything like that. And it was when I got older that it's like, okay, I appreciate them. I love them. And there's lessons I've learned from Donnie and Diane and Danny, even when I kind of left and despised them a little bit. After the smoke cleared, you get a little older and you kind of realize that you don't know everything. That it's like, okay, they have helped me with it later in years, and even, I still use management stuff that I learned from Danny and Diane, and just, I still fire out some of Danny's one-liners, and I take credit for them now. But, some of the bullshit he used to spew, it's just, there's things that you take from everybody growing up and people you've worked for, and I have taken a lot of management stuff from them. I appreciate those people more than I've ever told them, and that I've ever let on. Now at 45 years old, I consider them family. I've always joked that Donnie was probably the closest thing I've ever had to a brother.
Sort of did it on their own, you know what I mean? But both of them, the whole family, because I watched the whole family was involved. It wasn't just it was him and his mom and his dad and his sisters, and they was trying to run businesses and still run a race car, and they all loved racing. So he grew up around racing also, same as I did. So it was once that stuff gets in your blood, you just don't get rid of it. But I guess I knew he was going to win a lot of races. I just didn't know if he was going to ever win as many as he did, but he did a great job.
I think if you're young like I was, you just aspire. You think it might be something you like well enough to make as your career. You don't really realize until you're you've been doing it a while and you're no good at it, that like maybe you're never gonna make it a career. You know, I was very fortunate to have family that funded it. We had our own stuff, so and I did get fired several times. I know I got fired twice from my father, but I got rehired by my mother 3 times. So that always helps. And it's, you know, it took me a long time to really realize that it was actually going to be a good career. I mean, yeah, when we won the first outlaw race at Cottage Grove, Oregon in '98, you kind of get that sense of relief, like, oh, I finally did it. You know, and the way we did it, we had to pass Steve and Sammy, which was incredible to this day. So, honestly, it took me 10 years after that to actually honestly believe that I was going to make a decent career of it. I mean, you can go along doing something at a pace that you might be content with, but you're not content with it all at the same time. So, some days I still look back and think I'm not sure quite how I made a career out of it, but it's been great.
First time Pennzoil World of Outlaws A-Main winner. Donny, how's it feel?
Oh man, this is a good feeling. You know, running second there, you know, I'd be definitely happy running second, but man, when I knew I could pass Sammy, it was just, it's a whole different feeling. It's a feeling I never had before. You know, you got to give credit to anybody that's won one of these races before. This is awesome.
Tell us a little bit about the change that you guys have made in the last couple of weeks. It seems like very strong performances beginning at the Knoxville Nationals.
Yeah, you know, Dave Yanks out of Pennsylvania, we kind of teamed up with him, and Todd Devnich been with us all year, and ever since Dave come here, you know, we've just been really fast. The communication between me and him's real well, and I'm really confident that we can win just about every night out. You know, I know everybody's going to have their bad runs and bad luck, but man, it just feels good. It paid off for us tonight.
Now that you've got your first win, do you think this will change you in the eyes of some of your competitors, that realizing that you are a serious competitor out here?
Well, I don't know. You know, I've run second a couple times, and you know, maybe it will. I think everybody that's won one of these races definitely can compete in this deal, and I'm not out here just for a year or two. I want to, you know, I dedicated my whole life to this ever since I was 10 years old, and you know, man, everything I've ever worked for tonight just it feels so good. So hopefully, you know, maybe we can be a real big contender in the next couple of years.
Congratulations, Donny.
Thanks.
They're going to battle to the end, but Donny Schatz is going to do it. He won.
Trying to take the lead down the back straightaway.
That was something else right there by Craig Delansky. He had the lead until Donny Schatz chased him down on the bottom.
Well, Schatz was able to move around. That's kind of an advantage running in second. He found the line, was able to retake the lead into 3 and 4.
Once Donny Schatz was in front, he cruised and ended up winning.
You know, us having our own race team was a lot of fun. It's the only way I was able to get to where I'm at today. I would have never made it driving for a Gary Stanton or a Dennis Roth or a Tony Stewart even before I did it. It was just, I would have been short term. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't prepared for it. So, you know, having your own team, you learn that. But sometimes the hardest thing you can do is work for a father-son, because you're always going to get 2 different answers, and you're stuck in a family, not a battle, but, you know, it's always one against the other. And so when we had the opportunity to come and race with Tony Stewart Racing, it was really one of the best things that ever happened to me. It allowed us to still go race, and we all wanted to race at that level and do it successfully, but it allowed us to remove all the racing aspect of it, trying to manage a race team that was never here, financially, physically, mentally, try to keep help. It let us focus more on business and get away from the racing and beyond that. And I think that's huge.
You know, when we looked at hiring Donny, I mean, he was the hottest thing in wing sprint car racing, and even after we hired him, he stayed that way for a long time. But the thing about Donny is Donny would win a race and still be frustrated after the race was over, and you'd question, you know, like, you just won a World Outlaw race. I mean, to 98% of the world, winning a World Outlaw race is pretty tough. And Donny was one of those guys that would just be a little frustrated, and you'd say, what were you frustrated about? And he's like, well, this was off a little bit, or we should have done this, or car needed to do this and it wasn't doing what it needed to do. And so he was just one of those guys that I liked from the standpoint that he's always looking how to make it better and never thinking that what he's got is good enough. I mean, he just always wanted it to be better.
Tony had started talking about Donny, you know, and there were rumblings, you know, through the shop that they had started the talks at that point, that they, you know, Tony wanted to win, and Donny was obviously winning everything under the sun. So there was definitely a spotlight on him at that point. He was consistent, he was winning big events, and just his overall demeanor, everything that he did was polished and professional, and that fits the mold here at Tony Stewart Racing. I can remember the first day they came in the office, and we actually weren't supposed to know it. Obviously, everybody in the building knew who he was when he walked in, and they kind of ushered him into Brett's office, and they had conversations and different things. As we got into probably June and July of that year, would have been 2007, I remember we started to coordinate how we were going to make the announcement, and that would have been with the Armor All car. They actually unveiled the car later that year at Charlotte Motor Speedway during the Cup event. Tony and Donny actually unveiled it, but they made the announcement that Donny was coming to TSR during Knoxville Nationals in 2007, and that actually would have been on what is now the defunct Speed Channel. But it was really cool the way it was coordinated, because all eyes were on sprint car racing at that particular time. You know, that broadcast, it was a very unique situation to be in. But I do remember very much so the way that it all kind of came together, and it was supposed to be a secret, and for the most part it was kept pretty secret. You know, there were rumblings out there in the pits, but there weren't anything that was definitive. And when the announcement was made, it was made in a big way. I just remember it being like shockwave.
He came in the office one day and he sat down and he closed the door and he said, "Come on, Mom, I got to ask you something. I don't know how you and Dad will take this, but Tony Stewart asked if I wanted to drive for him." And I said, "Well, Don, that's a great opportunity. We would never stand in the way of you ever going to drive for somebody else. We got a lot more opportunity going there than what we can probably offer you." And he'd had 2 championships by that time. But at the same time, it was a burden on us. We'd opened up the Petro, and without a big sponsorship, we had Parker Stores at the time, which was a good sponsorship, and we had Ballard Trucking. We felt like we had some pretty good sponsors, but not the type of sponsors that somebody like Tony could come up with. So, and Danny felt the same way. Never stand, you know, in his way to try to do something that would even be better for him in the long run than what we could offer him.
You know, I guess I was kind of in a situation where I was glad that Tony was looking for somebody else to put in a car, and when we suggested to him that partnering up would be the deal, he wanted to go to Indy and meet, and we flew over to Indy, and I think our total discussion on what we were going to do took less than 10 minutes.
You know, on the wing side of the shop, we'd always had wing sprint cars as long as I could remember. You know, Tony had a very established team, had success with Danny Lasowski. But when they signed Donny to bring the 15 here, it was like, okay, this team is about to get really serious really quick, because now you had 2 viable entries. You had the 20 car and you had the 15. But it was very much, it was a positive vibe. I just remember that announcement being very positively receptive. You know, it was well thought of during that time period.
Well, covering a lot of athletes when I worked at the daily newspaper, you know, there are guys in the NFL like Tom Brady and you know, Peyton Manning, guys like that. They have to win. They have that it factor. I think Donny Schatz, out of all the sprint car drivers I've covered, there's only been a few guys who had that it factor, and Donnie's one of them. And what sticks out the most, you know, he wins the Knoxville Nationals, and they used the Tuesday after the Saturday show at Knoxville, they used to have a race at McCool Junction, and you know, it's I don't want to say it's a nothing show, but comparatively speaking, it's in between the Knoxville Nationals and the West Coast Swing, and it's really kind of just a bridge show. And Donnie treated it like it was a Knoxville Nationals. And you talk to him after he wins like his 8th, 9th Knoxville Nationals title, and he's saying, yeah, you know, we'll enjoy it tonight, but Tuesday we're back at it and we want to win McCool Junction. And that just always stuck with me. I mean, there's a lot of guys who want to win, but he meant it, and he had that it factor that it's all about winning.
My dream was always to do this. It was always to be part of the Outlaws. It was always to, you know, obviously that dream changed. I just dreamt of winning a race, and then it was dreamt of winning another race, and then you keep changing your goal. You keep moving the goalposts, and it got to be championships, and then big races. You know, it just kept evolving and moving. And once you do it, even though you do it, you win a nationals one time or you win a championship, it's not that you stop wanting to do it. It's just you keep moving that goalpost out there. I want to do that again.
Even as a teammate or as his car owner, when he gets in that mode, I try not to mess with him. I don't want to be around him. I don't want to get him out of his rhythm, because he does. When it comes time to get dressed and it's time to do engine heat, from that moment on, I mean, he is locked in 100% on what he's doing. And, you know, you kind of follow his lead at that point. I mean, if he wants to talk about something, great. But I'm not going to go up there and interrupt what he's doing to ask him a question about something that's not related to the race car at that moment. He's just one of those guys that when it's showtime, he flips that switch and he gets in work mode.
If you're going to war, you want Donny Schatz leading the platoon, because he can be an intense, you know, when it's time to go, it's time to go, you know. And he has you know, all the good ones do, all the great ones do, you know. He has that killer instinct. He has a chip on his shoulder. He has a point he needed to prove, and I still think it's there. He's just maybe handicapped a little bit in a couple departments, but he frickin', yeah, you look up intense in the dictionary and it's him, you know. We could go on and on about the whole family dynamic. You know, they have a successful businesses and all that. Does he need the money? Hell, I don't know. You know, we all like to make money, but he wants wins. He just wants to give the big FU to everybody. So, yeah, there's no one you'd want to go more into battle with than him.
I always said something about Don to my friends that didn't know him is it's amazing when it comes time to put the helmet on, the look on his face and his attitude and everything. And I think that that's what makes him what I call the greatest there is.
Well, talking about Donny Schatz today, and the car we have on display currently is his 2009 Knoxville Nationals winner here. Of course, it was a dedication to Mario Andretti's, the 40th anniversary of his win at Indy, and that was in 1969, of course. And we had Mario Andretti here, who's also a member of our Hall of Fame here. Of course, Donnie not quite old enough to be involved, but his family has been very involved with the Hall of Fame. His father, Danny, and his mother, Diane, of course. Here at the Hall of Fame, we have had a display dedicated to Donnie in the past with several of his Knoxville Nationals winners, and they're always cooperative with us, as is Tony Stewart, of course, who just was inducted in our Hall of Fame in June. So this is a really special family here, the Schatz family, and they're really special to the Hall of Fame. and we can talk about some of his achievements as well in the history of the sport of sprint car racing. I think one of the incredible things about Donny Schatz is he's in the top 5 in all-time sanction wins. In fact, he's 4th all-time in sanction wins. So any race that had a sanction, we're talking back to the early 1900s, he's 4th on the all-time list. There's only 3 drivers that have more, Steve Kinzer, Sammy Swindell, and Emery Collins. So he's 4th on the all-time sanction win list. And I think that's one of the pretty incredible things about Donny. Another thing about Donny that might be a little different from some of those other drivers is the vast majority of his wins, I would like to say, came on a little more even playing field than some of those drivers had in their day. You know, they had a little more sophisticated equipment at times than most of the field. And I think a lot of Donny's wins have come when the field has all the same equipment. So I think that makes it all the more impressive.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to, watch Donny's whole career. I guess that means I'm a little older, but my first remembrances of him was coming to Knoxville to weekly shows and maybe getting lapped in the B main a couple of times before he really caught on. What's impressive is he's really earned what he's had. Starting in Wissota, up there, mastering the 360s, and then moving into the 410s, and pretty much going straight on the road and learning, by trial and error with the World of Outlaws. And that's what he had to do in the early years. And we see drivers do that and go out there, but he and the family, they really persevered. They stayed out there, and the proof's in the pudding. All the championships, all the Knoxville Nationals titles, all the big races that they won across the country. Until last year, he wins his 300th World of Outlaw feature. So I think what's most impressive with the family is their perseverance and the way they've always stuck with it. And I really feel fortunate that I've been able to see the whole process with Donny throughout his career.
Go ahead.
From what I've heard, Doug Wolfgang was one of Donny's heroes. This car just happens to be from 1989 when Wolfgang was really dominating. And I know for Donny, it probably would be an honor for him to have this car, beside his car on the other side of the aisle. So that's pretty cool. I know Doug's also a hero of his car owner, Tony Stewart. So, I just see a lot of parallels there. 2 guys from the upper Midwest and 2 guys that really excelled in sprint car racing. Obviously, we're here at the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame, and of course, Donny's not eligible to be in the Hall of Fame yet, but I don't think there's any doubt that, someday he will be a part of it with all his championships and all his wins, the legacy that he's led not only with the World of Outlaws, but with sprint car racing in general. I think, we all know it's just a matter of time before he's going to be inducted into the hallowed halls of the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame.
Well, you're at the place where a lot of the memorabilia, trophies, cars that have significance have made their way up here at the hangar at the airport in the office. We acquired this hangar, I suppose probably 2008. We used to be on the other end of the field, but we ran out of room, and my next door neighbor, Paul, had this place, and this is where he operated his business out of, and he wanted the downside, so it ended up being a great swap. So we got a little bit bigger hangar door and got this place to jam all these trophies. There's a lot of stuff around here. The guys at TSR have been gracious enough to grace me with some side panels that I'll probably hang up someday on the walls, and there's stuff really all over my sister's new place and all that. So pictures, some of the pictures that are more memorable, the Prelude to the Dream when I got to drive for Darrell Lanigan was pretty neat. My first experience in a late model, had an absolute blast. I wish I had the experience now to go back and run that race again. It'd probably be a different story. But so it's there's things that have, from winning Calistoga, a really unique trophy to some of the articles that have been in Speed Sport and Sprint Car and Midget and all that. A few things from recent years, Stockton Dirt Track always gave a unique racing wheel trophy, which is pretty neat. Last year's Lake of the Ozark race, giving kneeboard something different, which is really unique. So there's some checks, and obviously the two most previous Kings Royals that I have are right there, and the kids love to come up and play with them crowns. They kind of think that's funny. So this car here, Tony gave me this car when I won my 200th win. I was quite shocked, but it's very gracious of a car owner to do that. So that car's been sitting here. It's really been untouched. The guys have been up here a few times and measuring a few things, obviously, to see if things have changed. But pretty neat to have that in here. See some stuff, obviously. The Summer Nationals belt from Williams Grove. Some of the slots from the Vegas races. Some of the cool sets we've won from back in the Craftsman days with the series. So there's some trophies. There's some pretty memorable photos. My first Nationals win with my dad's reaction. So there's a lot of neat things in pictures, and a lot of trophies have accumulated here. You know, we won the Brad Doty Classic a couple times, so there's a helmet and a trophy. A couple of the races from Rapid City and Texas where Cowboy Hat was acquired, so that was pretty special to me. The Jackson Nationals, it's always got a unique trophy. The ones with the cups are always pretty unique, and so most of them just get stored here. And this car here, this one was from when I had my own team, or my family team, back in 2007. We had a great year in 2007. We won most of the big races, and it happened, you know, in that car and the way it was done up, and I still have the motor from that, lucky number 13. And that's the next addition up here is we're going to put lucky number 13 on an engine stand and get it back to the way it was, because that's really the only moving parts I have left from having a family-owned team. So my father didn't really want to sell it. He felt like that motor was glorious, and maybe someday the kids will get to use it again as a memento. But so definitely a few things accumulated here. Someday, when a guy can slow the pace down a little bit and go through it all and put it in a timely manner, and you know, get a structure to it to where you can you know, understand where it all came from and be a little bit more organized, it'd be fun to go through. But it's really hard to do that and try to race at the level we do and keep the pace that we do with everything else. So for right now, it's going to have to stay unorganized, and maybe someday we'll get it a little bit cleaner. So this car I just acquired not too long ago here, maybe year and a half. There's a very unique story behind this car. This is a 360 car I drove for Richard and Lana Samir. Several years ago, Richard became a great friend, but he didn't start off that way. And I think some of the people that I probably know the best will probably tell you that same story of how our friendship started off. Judging a book by its cover really is how it happened. And so we were in Vegas. I don't even know the year, but I had my own team, and we were at the Silverton parking lot where the Bass Pro was, because that's where we were staying. I had a new motor with an experimental injection on it. It was me and one other guy, and we were trying to get this motor running in the parking lot, and this thing was running, and it had 8 individual injector shafts. So you had to have this linkage arm connecting all of them. Everything was in metric. It was just completely out of our element, and it was running rough. So I got this thing running, and this guy comes up, and he starts talking to me while this motor's running, and I'm trying to get things set so it'll idle. And anyway, I didn't pay too much attention to him. As you know, just you're working on something I didn't pay enough attention. And so 15 minutes later, when I got this motor shut off, I look around, and there's this guy. He's throwing his Donny Schatz hat in the garbage and la-di-da. And anyway, so later that year was our first trip to Edmonton, to Canada to race. And they had a great big pit party for everyone. They were kind enough to do a steak cookout, and everybody had a little after race party that was put on by the track. So a lot of the crews and teams were part of it. And there, I got to meet up with Richard and Lana, and Richard's wife had told me this story of how I kind of neglected Richard. And I apologized to him for, what had happened. I think he took it wrong, that what I'd done, but I wasn't ignoring him. I was just trying to do something while the motor was running and get it right. We had a few drinks, and voila, we became great friends. And Richard was the kind of guy that would hop in his car and drive 18 hours and go to the races with me for the weekend and turn around and drive 18 hours back home. So they had a race team of their own. Jason Sowell drove for him, Travis Rylett drove for him, and we had a couple of ideas to just go 360 racing when the season was over. We went to Las Cruces a few times, we went to Tucson, but I only got to drive it a handful of times. We went to Las Vegas once on Thanksgiving, so that was pretty neat. We didn't really ever win anything, but I'm pretty sure we had the most fun of anybody there, because that's how Richard was. He had a motto of win or lose, we drink booze, and he was a French-Canadian guy that was really funny and give you the shirt off his back. So when he passed, his wife had contacted me and offered this to me, so it was great for me to have. I want to get it on the ground and get it maybe in the office here with the rest of the stuff. But so it's really unique. Richard was he was an oil field worker. He ran a big company up there, and a lot of his friends were in the oil industry, which we all are here. So that's why it looks really unique. I think in its day it was really unique design, so it's pretty cool to be a part of. And I wish we could go back and have some more fun memories like we had back then, but unfortunately the guy upstairs has a bigger plan for that. So I'm just very fortunate to have this car in my possession. So up on top of this bathroom is my 06 Nationals car. My very first Knoxville Nationals win. We tried to get everything as original as it was. Obviously it's got a plastic engine in it as a dummy, but it's roamed around to a few places. It sat in the Hall of Fame for a little bit, and it's really unique paint. I remember that win. It was pretty surreal. When it was over, I was like, man, I guess I was supposed to run second, but we just won it, so it was great. So to be able to have that car is pretty neat. Probably need to do a little cleanup on it and get the tires aired back up, but it's pretty cool to have, from having your own team, the 06 car, the 07 car, from winning all the races. So they're both up here, and it's pretty neat. But over here we have, this is how we grew up. This is the kind of level of competition that my family did. My mother and father were into horses, and draft horses is what it was, and the only way you can relate it to is the Budweiser Clydesdales. We just had Belgians, and we showed all over the country and Canada, and had a great time with it. And this here is really the only thing that's left from all that. This wagon was made in Canada by a guy. He cut the tree down in his own backyard and did it all by hand, and it's really, we used to put it in the foyer at the Petro during Christmas and decorate it up, but we've lost some of that valuable foyer space in there with all the expansion and adding and taking different things away. So it sits here at the airport, and it's a reminder every day of the competition that my mother and father did. It kind of instilled in us kids. This is a recent thing here. Our neighbors over here, the O'Days. This is one of my very first go-karts. They acquired this from my father when we sold it, and they were gracious enough to give it back here a couple months ago. So thinking we're going to do a little restoration project, try to get it back to original, and maybe just put it in the office just for shits and giggles. It's neat to see. It's really hard to keep everything moving around here when you're on the go all summer long and really all year long, and everybody has their things they have to keep up with. So that's why it's just sitting there at the moment. And you can see a little bit of this is the machine I fly right here. This is quite an airplane. We've used aviation in our businesses for a long time. It really goes hand in hand. Got into aviation from having businesses on the opposite end of the state. When I started racing in '93, we were just starting my father was just starting a construction project here in Fargo, and we all resided in Minot. So it's really hard to be away from your family, and so he used aviation a lot, and went from flying single-engine planes to twin-engine planes to turboprops to eventually having an aircraft that'll go long distances in short amounts of time. So, you know, we've had several aircraft over the years. We have a lot of stories. Aviation is something that you really use as a tool. It's a lot of fun to have. You know, races get done and you're able to get home in a 3 or 4 hour period and sleep in your own bed and get back to work and do the things that need to do. It's really neat. So this is the latest thing that we fly here, and it's very efficient machine. It goes long distances in short amounts of time and very safely. So we've had a correlation with even partners over the years with it. You know, Textron is the maker of this. So we've had with Bad Boy Buggies and Easy Go and even Arctic Cat. So we've worked with those people for a long time. So we've had a great relationship. So this is kind of where we keep most of the stuff because it's the easiest place. Obviously, there's stuff scattered all over between my father's place and some of the most unique things. I know where the 300 win trophy is. I keep that hidden very well, and so glad we could show you a few little things around here, but nothing real earth-shattering.
Why do you guys want to be race car drivers?
You go. Okay. I like the sport. I mean, everybody around the sport's awesome. Friends, family. We've taken after Donnie, and it's just part of our family.
Yeah, I want to be a part of racing too, because it's just what our family does and is a part of, and I love being part of it.
Amelia is, I don't know, she's like Donnie. She's very ice in the veins and calculated and cool and like very well thought out methodically and very smooth. Layla is, you know, she doesn't give any room for error. She's very, you know, quick-witted and she makes quick reactions. And I think, ironically, what they've each chosen is probably fits their personality well. And, you know, as long as they love it, you know, I continuously tell them they're really good basketball players. And I'm like, you guys, you can't count on racing as at 13 or 14 years old as like where you want to be. I love it. That's where you want to go. But the percentage of people that make it is so small, and it consumes your life, you know. And you need to understand that you want to be where your uncle is, but what's realistically how you're going to get there.
It's hard to watch. Those kids they love racing, obviously, because they've been around it so much. But it's hard to go watch them for me. I know what my mom went through at times, and she obviously got past it. But you know, they like it. It's what you grow up around. You're going to be addicted to what you're around, and they do good with it. My dad's done a great job with them kids. You know, I don't get the chance to go with them all the time and do the things I want. Maybe someday when I'm, you know, a little bit slower with things, maybe I'll have more, and heck, maybe I'll even be the pilot for one of them someday. But you know, it's been fun. It's great to see that some of that generational wisdom that my father had was able to trickle down a little bit and with the kids, and I feel like it gives them a running head start versus me. Like they can see some of the mistakes it took me 10 years to figure out. They can fix that like that. The mentality you can't teach someone, and they really have the racer mentality. It's just all the little tricks that come along with it.
All the grandkids, you know, admire Don for what he has done in the sport. There's no doubt about that. And I think now that the twins are at a level where they're competing, and competing at an even more aggressive level, with these different series out there, they realize the commitment that it takes, and even the mindset. I mean, when you can get a 13-year-old girl to come home and say, I don't think my sister had her mind in it tonight. You know, it's kind of funny that at 13 years of age, those kids can see that that's kind of what it takes too to compete at this level. It isn't just the physical ability to get in and drive a car. You can have the best equipment, but you still have to have your mind in the game. And I think even the girls realize that more as they're getting involved, and they want to step up their program maybe to sprints, or one wants to get in the late model, one wants to get in a sprint. I don't know what will happen down the road. It's a pretty big commitment both ways, so we'll see how that all works out. They play basketball too, and Don makes it to a basketball game once in a while, but not very often. That's not really his forte, to watch him play basketball, but he does go to watch him go-kart race when we can. That works out pretty good.
You know, there's still some disciplines of racing that I wish I've always had a thing for them Silver Crown cars. I think it's because it's really like in, old school days when you think of Mario driving them and AJ, and the guys are really cool. They're really cool personalities, just cool people in general. And, it's like driving around a bathtub full of water. In long races, and I got to dabble in a little bit. I kind of come to the conclusion that maybe asphalt wasn't the thing for me in those, even though I run the Copper World one year, and but I had a lot of fun on the dirt with them. I still haven't made a whole lap at the Indy Mile in one, but it is what it is. It's I guess the Indy Mile's gone now, so I don't have to worry about doing that. But yeah, would I have been in a position where I was more of a contender at a young age and won championships, and then had an opportunity to maybe go do something like IndyCar or NASCAR? I probably would have taken it a lot more serious, but I didn't take it serious because my dream was always to do this. It was always to be part of the Outlaws. It was always to, obviously that dream changed. I just dreamt of winning a race, and then it was dreamt of winning another race, and then you keep changing your goal. You keep moving the goalposts, and it got to be championships, and then big races. It just kept evolving and moving, and once you do it, even though you do it, you win a nationals one time or you win a championship, it's not that you stop wanting to do it. It's just you keep moving that goalpost out there. I want to do that again. And I don't think it's like that, when you get to them.
He just never really expressed an interest in doing anything different. And, I don't think it was until we invited him to run the Prelude to the Dream at Eldora, and we got him in a late model. It was like, I think that was one of the first times that he really opened up about something that he wanted to try, and something outside of the sprint car that he was really genuinely interested in getting into. And I had known that he had had a pavement sprint car and had tried some other things, but he just never really talked about it. And so when all you're talking about is your dirt program, and that's all he had done for years and was great at, I mean, in my eyes, that's where his head was at, and that's where, that's where he wanted to be. That's where I wanted him to be as well.
All-star that he could be. He's never deviated from that path. He's never had, I think, other things have piqued his interest over the course of other years, but he didn't do a lot of those other races. Like, he didn't run Chili Bowl for a long time. He didn't dabble in late models for a long time. He's never run non-wing sprint car races, during his tenure here, because he wants to make sure that he's as healthy as focused on winning the championship that he can be. And I think that that's something that says a lot, because there's a lot of distraction in the sport. There can be a lot of distraction, but for him to focus and be as focused as he has been all these years, there was no way that anybody was going to mistake his drive and what his mindset and his end game goals were. He wanted to be a World of Outlaws star, and he's done that. I don't even know that he wants to be a star. I think he more focused on, I want to be a World of Outlaw multi-time champion, and he's accomplished that.
family is definitely, it's been a lot of fun doing that with them. I mean, we do race together, we work together, we argue about things together, but then again, we're still a family, and there's times you just park all that aside and enjoy having dinner together. So grandkids obviously help that. They make things a lot easier some days, but you know, it's been a great, they've been great teachers and tutors in that way, and like I said, to this day, it's still ever changing. Me and my dad haven't argued for like 15 minutes, so, and it's not even an argument. Some people would view it as an argument, but for us, it's just a debate or a difference of opinion. So we've always had that, and some people have probably read into it the wrong way, but I wouldn't change it. It's I'm glad I still get to have them disagreements.
Do you feel that he pushed you to?
Oh, he pushed me. Oh, he pushed me. I mean, there was nights. I remember one in particular. We were at Manzanita, and I started 11th. Jeff Swindell won the B main and started 21st. And I went into turn 3. The race hadn't even started yet, and there went Jeff Swindell. We had a red flag, so we stopped. And you know, back then the crews could come up to the track or stand there or whatever, and I was like, he was in the B main. I was starting 11th. That was a good starting spot for me back then. He jumped the start that bat, just took off, and I mean, you got nothing to lose back there. You can't blame him for it. But anyway, he got away with it. Well, they went red, so he didn't get away with it. The next time it was worse. Well, then we had another red flag. We had another crash. So I get out of the car and I'm like looking for the official. I was like gonna start complaining, like, can you not see what's going on? Because we used to have a guy standing there in the corner, and next thing you know, I was 4 foot in the air, like literally off the ground going that way. So I thought someone hit me with a push truck, right in the ass. Well, here was my dad. He booted me right in the ass so hard it lifted me off the ground and sent me. And he's like, "You just get in the car and drive, and I'll worry about this." And it kind of ticked me off because he never actually did go say anything. But he kind of has always preached, you know, don't worry about what you can't control. And he was right, but I should have never been worried about it. There wasn't nothing I could do about it anyway. But it was a lesson, you know. And he pushed. And if he wouldn't have, I don't think I'd be sitting here today being able to deal with those things. I mean, when we were kids, if we had a spanking coming, we got it. If we had a pat on the back coming, we got it. We rarely never had pats on the back coming, so we didn't get them very often. And in racing, it's not about making someone feel good.
So in a way, we're at the National Open, and he won that. And we had some Pennsylvania guys that have become fans over the years, and they were around. And one was a volunteer fireman. No, he was a fireman for a living. Well, anyway, they'd got a new fire truck, so the guy takes a siren off the fire truck and gives it to me. And we mounted it on the mule. Now, a siren on a mule is really kind of exciting. So, in a way, Diane and I and the t-shirt trailers were out behind the gate there. I'm driving the mule and she's riding on the side, and we're going down the back straightaway, and we get close to Beer Hill, and I hit this siren. Whoa! Donnie's waving his arm and slamming the goddamn brake on. Diane's chewing my ass. So anyway, we go probably another 150 feet, and I give her another whoa, and he stops the car, gets out, and he said, "If you blow that son of a bitch again," he said, "we're going home and I'm not coming back with you. I want these people to think that I'm going to win this every night without being a goddamn fool." And of course, she's chewing my ass at the same time, so I think I got the siren laying here if you need a siren.